There are whispers. Whispers of two great legends about the Emperor and his gene-forged sons. Not the official tales that the ecclesiarchy feeds the faithful. No, these are older, darker, stories that slip through cracks, fragments rescued from corrupted Mechanicus databanks, or pieced together by desperate savants trying to make sense of the greatest betrayal in history. The first is the Molech bargain. It claims the Emperor made a pact with the Chaos gods on that ancient world, that he knelt before them, offered some unfathomable concession, perhaps even his own loyalty, in exchange for the knowledge to create the primarchs. In this telling, Molech becomes the scene of divine diplomacy, the Emperor not as conqueror, but as negotiator, one who outwitted the gods themselves. The second is the soul shard theory. This tale paints a far more tragic picture. It says the primarchs were not simply forged, they were carved from the Emperor himself. That each child carried a piece of his own infinite soul. That he sacrificed himself, diminished his essence to give life to his sons. In this version, the heresy becomes not rebellion, but heartbreak, a family tragedy, the sons destroying the very father who gave them life. Both are elegant stories. Both too neat, too symmetrical. They comfort us because they make betrayal seem inevitable, either the collapse of an unholy pact or the resentment of stolen divinity. But the ruin text destroys them both. It reveals something far more terrifying. The Emperor was no partner at Molech. He was a thief, a predator. He didn't kneel to the thrones of the ruinous powers. He walked into their domains, into their very halls of godhood, and stole from them the fire they used to make themselves divine. Imagine it. A man, no, not truly a man, but still a being of flesh, striding into the immaterium, ignoring their threats, their fury, and leaving with their birthright in his grasp. The audacity, the insult. From that moment, to the Chaos gods, he was not a wayward ally. He was the anathema. Molech was no accident, no incidental world. Beneath its crust lay a wound in reality, a gate, a relic of the war in heaven, built by hands so ancient even the Eldar whisper only guesses. Through that gate the Emperor passed, alone, trusting only in his psychic wards and his unbreakable will. And when he returned, he was changed. He carried not just knowledge, but essence, a spark of the gods' own creative fire. He had stolen what they thought eternal, and the warp would never forgive him. That was the first theft, the daring, daylight robbery. The second theft was darker, more dangerous, carried out not on Molech, but beneath the shadow of the imperial palace itself. There, deep below the foundations, he found vaults older than memory, relics from the dark age of technology, cathedrals of stone and steel, once tended by the men of iron, long since destroyed. Here, the Emperor lit the forges again. Engines of life itself, machines so sophisticated that even Mars, at its most decadent height, could never match them. He replaced their AI cores with something new, hybrids of flesh and machine, servants lobotomized and hardwired into logic thrones, overseen by the emperor's own psychic imprint. Not machines anymore, extensions of his will. The Primarch project had begun. Genetic perfection sculpted not just for war, but for legend. But flesh and bone were not enough. To truly make gods of men, the emperor needed something more, and so he stole again. Not knowledge this time, but essence, warp fire, shards of proto-gods, embryonic beings of emotion and belief that had not yet ascended into full divinity. He hunted them in the shadows between the four great powers, and when he found them, he did not ask. He bound them, caged them, forced their essence into flesh. Each Primarch was a prison. Each one carried a captive spark of something vast, dangerous, eternal. No wonder they were more than human. No wonder they were myth made flesh. And no wonder they could never truly be free. Because every prison strains, every captive whispers, every shard bled its nature into its host, curiosity into Magnus, perfection into Fulgrim, stone-hard inevitability into Dorn, compassion so fierce it bordered on inhumanity into Vulcan. The Emperor hadn't left them incomplete. He had made them too complete, each one a reflection of himself, each one believing they alone carried the truth, each one an emperor in their own right. And what happens when too many emperors share the same stage? War. The frescoes of the Great Crusade painted them as brothers, arm in arm, united beneath their father's gaze. But that was propaganda, a beautiful lie. They were not brothers. They were weapons. Weapons built from stolen divinity. Weapons that one day would turn. The Horus heresy was not just rebellion. It was a prison break. Some Primarchs flung open their doors, embracing their captive gods as allies. Others twisted slowly, no longer knowing where their will ended and the shards began. And some remained loyal, but loyal while carrying the weight of an eternal siege inside their own souls. This was the Emperor's crime. He made weapons sharp enough to wound gods, and in doing so, planted the seeds of his own undoing. And now, 10,000 years later, the chains weaken, the golden throne falters. Guilliman has returned, but what has awoken in him? The man, the Primarch, or the shard opening its eyes? The gods have not forgotten what was stolen from them. Every Black Crusade, every incursion, every psychic storm, all part of a greater war, not aimed at Terra, not at humanity, but at the vessels still walking among us. The Primarchs, the living prisons. And one day, when their bodies finally fail, when the prisons break, those sparks will be free again. The gods will come to collect. Even angels cast shadows long enough to swallow worlds. The Long War was never about Terra. It was never about humanity. It was always about taking back what was stolen.